over the next few months as cities start to reopen up. Joining me now, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, who's in isolation. Treasurer, is the worst over? How closely are you going to be watching New South Wales?
Well, very closely, but this is a very big positive step forward, Kochie, to see New South Wales open from Monday and people get back to work. And obviously, this is the reward that people are getting for getting the jab. No jab, no joy. But if you've had the jab, as so many people in New South Wales have, indeed across Australia, then you'll start to get your freedoms back. And I think that's really important. But as for the economy, we're confident that it will bounce back as it has done before when we've gone into lockdowns previously. And as the Reserve Bank itself has said, the Delta strain has delayed but not derailed the economic recovery.
Yep. All right, before we get on to the economy, just on the health side of opening up, obviously cases are going to go up. A lot of the states are saying they want more funding for hospitals. They have a point. Are you going to open the purse strings for them?
Well, I'll tell you what a bigger point is that we have increased our funding since coming to government for hospitals by around 92%. So we've nearly doubled the funding for hospitals under the coalition government. And if you look at the individual jurisdictions from New South Wales to Queensland down to Victoria, we have increased funding by more than the states themselves have. So I know they've always liked to come to us asking for extra resources, but we have been providing that. Through this pandemic, we've been providing enormous support for our health system through telehealth, through the hospital system, through pathology, and obviously the vaccine procurement as well. So we have really dug deep to provide that extra funding already.
Okay, so you're saying fund it yourself if you need any more money?
We're saying we have been providing funding. If they want to put more funding in, we'd welcome that as well.
Let's talk about jobs with the bounce back in the economy. Official unemployment rate, 4.5%. Pretty misleading, though, isn't it? Because it doesn't count the 2 million people who are working fewer hours and those who stopped looking for work. How confident are you that the jobs are going to be around?
Well, again, experience is a very good guide here, Kochie, and it has shown that the economy is very resilient. You're right, 4.5% unemployment rate does not reflect the fact that some people have left the workforce, so there's been a reduction in the participation rate, as well as many people have been stood down on 0 hours, and that's where our $750 COVID disaster payments have been very effective, as well as our business support. But what we saw in Victoria in July, for example, was after they had eased restrictions and come out of lockdown, we saw nearly a 10% increase in the number of hours worked after falling around 8% the month prior. So once restrictions are eased, people get back to work very quickly. We've seen that in the past and we're confident we'll see that again.
Yeah, and a lot of businesses facing labour shortages at the moment because we don't have skilled migration coming in to fill the gap, do we? So are you expecting us almost to get to full employment?
Well, again, 4.5% is a 12-year low, and many of the doubters never thought that we would see such a recovery in our labour market as we've seen. This is why programs like JobKeeper actually saved the economy. They kept that formal connection between employers and employees, and they've now seen more people in work in Australia today than before the pandemic began.
Yep.
And we saw a V-shaped recovery ahead of any other advanced economy, a better bounce back than Canada, Japan, the United States, the United Kingdom. So there's still a lot of work to go, but Australians watching your show this morning can be confident about their economic future.
Okay, I know we've got to let you go shortly. Just the property market, overheating at the moment. APRA, the banking regulator, brought in tougher rules yesterday on how much you can borrow to try and cool the market down. Is it enough?
Well, we have welcomed this move by our prudential regulator. We think it's targeted. We think it's prudent. And if you do a bit now, you have to do then therefore less later. And that is the idea, to prevent the emergence of risks across the economy. We have a $10 trillion housing market. We've seen strong growth over the last year off the back of historically low interest rates. Other countries, Kochie, are seeing similar growth in their housing market. And what the regulator has sought to do here is to assess loans at an interest rate that is slightly higher than you would otherwise pay. And so therefore, if your individual circumstances change, there is a bigger buffer there to provide that level of economic support.
Yeah, that buffer is double what you're paying now. So it's more than a little buffer, it's a flaming big buffer. And state governments have been the big winners in this, haven't they? Because as property prices increase, their stamp duties go through the absolute roof. Do we need reform in stamp duty from the states?
Well, New South Wales has taken steps in that direction, the stamp duty land tax trade-off, and I've welcomed that in the past. But obviously, when states move to change their own tax system, because it's not a federal tax, it's a state tax, they're the ones who've got to find the balance sheet support to do that. But with respect to the housing market, what has been pleasing in this cycle compared to previous cycle, Kochie, is that more first home owners, more owner-occupiers are coming into the market. And this move will affect investors more than it will affect first home buyers.
OK. All right, Treasurer, know you've got other obligations. Thanks very much for your time.
Nice to be with you, Kochie.
Here's Nat.
Thanks, Kochie. Well, the newly appointed New South Wales Premier has confirmed the state won't be opening up earlier than Monday. But after meeting with the crisis